Guys, I'm happy to welcome back to the podcast our friend Trish Regan, host of the Trish Regan Show. By the way, the website, trishreganshow.com. She's also the editor of a multimedia publishing company, trishintel.com. Trish, welcome. Great to have you on the show. And wow, let me start with this business about the Durham report. I saw that Lindsey Graham was asked, what does he think should now happen? And he goes, well, I wish that someone at the FBI would call and apologize. So evidently, he thinks that an apology will set matters straight. Isn't it a fact that what Durham has confirmed, I won't say uncovered, because a lot of people already knew this, but an elaborate triangular scheme involving the Clinton campaign on the one hand, the intelligence agencies on the other, and the media, the third partner in this operation, all putting out a complete disinformation operation, clearly with the intent of influencing an election.
This was absolutely unbelievable. And let me just go back. I have lots of concerns about what they might be doing in 22 or did in 2020, lots of concerns about what they might be doing now. But let's go back to what was going down there in 2016. I mean, you said it. I mean, this was an opposition research campaign. This was coming from a major law firm out of DC that was representing Hillary Clinton. And then they went out and got Fusion GPS, which was an Oppo research firm, which then went and hired this ex-British spy who had a lot of contacts in Russia. He, in turn, Christopher Steele, hired a guy who, by the way, the United States government was concerned that the guy who fed all this information was a Russian spy himself. So Igor Dachenko, if I got that name right. So in other words, this was multi-layered. And what amazed me the most, Dinesh, and I'll just say this as a journalist, I'm very reluctant to go with something until I have multiple sources. And I always check those sources. And the other thing I do, Dinesh, is I think long and hard about the political bias or the financial bias, right? I cover the economy, that a particular source may have. Are they shorting that stock? Is that the reason why they want to put out bad information? Or are they politically motivated because maybe if you trace this thing back, it goes back to a political source, as this one did in the case of Hillary Clinton? And so what shocked me from the very beginning is how on earth our FBI would actually sign off on the wiretapping agreements to spy on American citizens and spy on the Trump campaign without having done the very basic due diligence that one would ask of oneself as a journalist, as a reporter. And then they were spoon-fed, the media was spoon-fed all this nonsense. You had all these ex-spy hacks like John Brennan out there insisting it was true. It was all false. And so I think that just has to have us take a step back. That's what we need to do right now. Some heads ought to roll at the FBI. Anybody that has these political biases, it is not called for. It is unacceptable. They should not have that kind of position in government.
Now, Trish, as we dig through the Durham report, it's very obvious. For example, Danchenko, the guy that you referenced, made all these wild allegations about a P-tape and so on. And supposedly he got it from another guy named Sergei Millian. We see in the Durham report, he didn't know Sergei Millian. He never talked to the guy. He basically made this up. And then you're saying a normal checking process would be, well, who'd you get it from? Let me call that guy, right? The FBI didn't do any of this. But do you think they didn't do any of this because they simply lost their competence and were suckered? Or do you think, I think more likely, the FBI totally knew what was going on. They totally knew that this was a framing of Trump. And they were like, we're not going to check because frankly, if we check, we might discover that we can't go forward.
Well, wouldn't it have occurred to someone at the FBI to maybe have called the hotel and gotten the hotel records? And then maybe they would have found out that, guess what? Donald Trump didn't even stay there. I mean, there were all these things that they could have, should have done. And I was like, gosh, I mean, I read the thing, right? Because it got published on BuzzFeed, and I personally wouldn't have chosen to publish it. I believe everybody should be able to read whatever, but I thought it was irresponsible of them to do so only because it was so obviously opposition research. And then people were running around treating it like gospel over on MSNBC. You know, the conspiracy just kept getting more wild and more wild. But yes, Dinesh, these are the things they should have done. So why didn't they? We have to ask ourselves, and we have to ask them that. That's why we should have everybody up. I want to see them all on Capitol Hill, and I want to see them answer these questions. Why didn't you ask the logical stuff that they teach you in, like, you know, any basic journalism class at a community college? Like, why isn't the FBI doing that? And I suspect, well, it's one of two reasons: total incompetence, which should have us quite fearful, or it was politically motivated. It may have been, in fact, and I'm being generous here, it may have been a combination of both. Yes, they're incompetent, but boy, oh boy, did they want to get them. They wanted to get them bad, and so they were willing to overlook things, right? They had their answer for that equation already. They had the answer, and now they just needed to plug in the dots and plug in whatever algorithm was going to get them there, and they didn't want to listen to anything that might negate that.
When we come back, more with Trish Regan.